And in our first look at Two Americas tonight, we're speaking with Indigenous members of our community who say there's just not enough attention paid to missing and murdered Indigenous people throughout the entire country, especially when compared to their missing or murdered white counterparts. Colette Bordelon has been looking into this issue for weeks now. She's live from downtown Colorado Springs to talk more about what she found. Colette?
Before Colorado Springs was founded as a resort town in 1871, it was home to several Native American tribes. And to make sure our city never forgets that history, this 60-foot mural stands here in downtown Colorado Springs, painted just last year. The red hand over the girl's mouth has become a symbol of missing and murdered Indigenous women whose stories often go untold. The U.S. Department of Justice says more than 4 in 5 American Indian and Alaska Native adults have experienced some kind of violence in their lives. But a local nonprofit says we need a task force to track the number of missing and murdered Indigenous people in Colorado because that data is so difficult to find. Hacia Advocate Program estimates there's 40 missing or murdered Indigenous people in Colorado right now, but they say one of their biggest challenges is ensuring victims are identified correctly as Indigenous by law enforcement.
How do we make sure the word is getting out consistently and accurately, and who's tracking it? How do we coordinate with law enforcement to make sure they're accurately identifying Indigenous people? Because that is something that happens on a very regular basis, that we are not accurately identified.
I reached out to the Colorado Springs Police Department to ask about this issue, who says they can mark someone as Native American or Alaska Native, but those decisions are typically made when someone identifies themselves as such. They say demographics don't factor into their investigations. They're always dedicated to finding justice for the victims and some kind of closure for the families. Those with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation say when they get information from local law enforcement, especially those with pictures, their cold case analyst will verify the race of the victim before adding it to their database. But those with Hacia have told me oftentimes a picture may not be available, or it could be very poor quality. Coming up at 6, I'll tell you how the CBI is actively working to combat inaccurately identifying victims as other races. Always watching out for you, Southern Colorado. Colette Bordelon, News 5.